Thanks for having me, and thanks for everything you do with the Searchfunder. I wish I had Searchfunder when I was starting out. Would have made things a lot easier. So I think because of Searchfunder, there's no excuse for not being well informed about search. It used to be a little ecosystem shrouded in mystery, but I don't think that's really the case anymore, or at least it shouldn't be if you find it to be that. So I'm excited to chat about and I think a very important topic, managing the year one transition. It's something that can be a crucial driver of value in your operating journey, getting off on the right foot. And it can be a dangerous time as well, and a transition period that's inherently difficult, where you're typically taking over for a business owner, twice your age, or even if they're the same age, it doesn't matter. They're the experts in the industry, you're the outsider. And it's just a difficult process. And so I wanted to share some thoughts and wanted to leave plenty of time for questions. So I'll jump in. Basically, I thought I'd start with background, but Karen did it for me. I just I'll take a minute to elaborate on what my business partner David and I are doing now. Basically, we started once we sold our search business, smarTours, a couple of years ago. We started investing in search. We noticed what we sort of felt to be a void in the search fund world, on the investor side. And we thought there was a need for more sort of engaged, value-added, partnership-oriented investors in the search ecosystem. And so we've constructed a model where we're working with a small number of searchers where we can be highly engaged and really active in helping them through their search efforts, and then ultimately in the acquisition and operating of the business that they acquire. So we work with 3 or 4 searchers a year, and our goal is to end up with 9 or 10 businesses, which is definitely a contrast to what you typically see at other investors. But enough about me. Topic at hand. As I said, it's difficult and it's daunting. And if you don't find it daunting, then you're probably not accurately sizing up the situation. It's a really hard thing to step into a business where you are a complete outsider, and where you're typically younger than the people you're managing, typically considerably younger, and the most common scenario for a search fund acquisition is a founder, owner, operator who's well versed in the industry, transitioning out of the business, and typically transitioning in relatively short order. And so, in big picture, my best advice is to be humble. I think this is true actually for all phases of search. If you're raising search capital, if you're trying to get and convince a potential seller to sell to you, humility is incredibly important. If you pretend like you know their business better than they do when you're trying to buy their business, they're not going to want to talk to you. And if you talk about how great your academic pedigree is, or how cool it is that you worked on Wall Street or wherever you worked, it's not going to serve you particularly well. Of course, you can project confidence, but humility, I think, is a really important through line throughout the entirety of the search fund journey. So, what does that mean? I think in sort of I have a typo, copy and paste. I put these slides together this morning, so I'll explain what the third bullet is actually supposed to be. But be humble about your own knowledge of the business. I think keep in mind that you may have done a few months worth of diligence. You may have even known a little bit about the industry prior to, jumping in and doing diligence, but you're an outsider. There are so many nuances that will take time for you to appreciate, and approaching sort of that and understanding that you've got a lot to learn is really important. And I think, being humble, not only about your own knowledge of the business, but just in your interactions with the seller is important, is really important. Even if you've acquired the business, you've written them a nice check, and it's your business now. They still have a tremendous amount of influence. They have relationships with the employees and can influence positively or negatively what the employees think of you. They probably have relationships with suppliers and customers. And I think it's important to approach that relationship with an appropriate degree of sort of situational awareness and humility, and express a real strong desire to learn. And the same thing is true with respect to employees who now report to you. They're on, you're paying them a salary, but in most cases, they know a heck of a lot more about the business than you do, even if they're much further down the food chain. So I think it's important to approach them with humility and express a desire to learn from them. And I think not only does that sort of engender a goodwill, but it helps you establish credibility, because you're being authentic and real, and not just sort of cocky in a disingenuous way. And that doesn't mean you can't be assertive at the same time and confident at the same time, but I really can't stress enough in your interactions across the board, certainly internally with people in the business, to acknowledge what you don't know, which is a lot. And I think a little bit more specifically, I alluded to a number of these points, but really, I think being proactive about expressing your desire to learn is critical. It's okay to admit that you don't know, that there's a lot you don't know. It's okay to show a little bit of vulnerability to your team. I think there's a desire, particularly if you're maybe insecure about your age or your experience, or to try to project just tremendous confidence. And again, confidence is okay, but it's also okay to admit when you don't know something, and just be open about how excited you are to learn and how eager you are to learn, and just be a sponge. You can, if you're willing to listen more than you talk in the first handful of months, first year, you can learn a tremendous amount. And I think that's critical to your future success, in addition to sort of critical, for building credibility. Part of this also is sort of, spending the time to get to know the team. That's going to be really important for your ability to lead the team, to learn the business, also to figure out what you ultimately need to enhance with respect to the team, who might not be a fit for your team, given sort of the growth plan that you put together. But with respect to the team, and just in general with sort of bigger strategic decisions, I would urge patience, and for any operator early on in their tenure, having recently acquired a business that they don't know much about, to not make any rash decisions. Coming in guns a-blazing, changing systems and processes and people and strategy. not only does that, it's just ill-advised. It's arrogant, and I don't think that that's really in the best interest of any you or any of your stakeholders. But it is a difficult balancing act. You also do want to be you need to be assertive at times. You do need to try to establish, while being humble and while listening and while learning, establish yourself as a leader. And I think that can be a fine line. It's a tricky it's tricky to balance the two. But you are gonna early on you're gonna be asked to make decisions, and that's gonna be your job to make decisions. But I think there's a way to be assertive where you can still sort of consult the team, try to build consensus, and be a leader with with the support of the people that you've inherited and that you're working with. A couple more points, and then I'll share I'll share a couple stories from our early days. But just a little bit more about learning. I think it's important to do more than just be there to learn. I think it's important to have a real plan about how you're going to learn. And so yes, you want to sort of take in as much as possible. But there are also some very specific things, and it varies by business, but there are some very specific things that you absolutely need to learn and that you want to focus on. In my view, sort of the two key questions that you want to ascertain in answers to in year one are, what does the business need to scale? And then what will derail the business? So what do you need to put in place to support meaningful growth? That's with an eye towards upside. And then, from the other angle, which, with an eye towards, you probably have some debt, and you certainly, the last thing you want to do as a search entrepreneur is just screw it up and destroy value. But where are your blind spots? You may, in your investment memo, and when you're talking to investors, you're going to acknowledge the risks that you see from the outside looking in, but there's a good chance that you'll see more. And potentially different risks than, and the gravest risks to the business may be something that you couldn't have anticipated when you were doing diligence. So focusing on, after you learn what the business needs to scale, putting that into place. And then when you understand sort of what couple things could really derail the business, trying to patch up those holes and make sure that you address them adequately. Last thing, we screwed this up, David and I, big time. I think, really try to resist the urge to start working in the business. It's almost invariably in search deals, you acquire businesses with a relatively lean team. And you're going to see things that need to get done. And I'm not saying that it's not important to roll up your sleeves and get your hands dirty. I'm not saying that you're above any task. You're not. But I think it's important to, if you are going to jump in and try to address some gaps yourself, to really have a plan to extricate yourself, or an idea about how that's going to be temporary. Because once you start working in the business, as opposed to on the business, it can be tough to extricate yourself. I think we fell prey to that in year one, and it took another year or so to appropriately extricate ourselves. Now, we learned a lot by sort of being in the business, but I think we went a little too far, and I think it took a long time to unwind that mistake. So I'll just share a couple sort of tidbits about our experience with smarTours, and then open it up for questions. And so smarTours was an interesting business. It was actually pretty large from a revenue and EBITDA perspective in a search context, but it was tiny. From an employee perspective, there was the seller, who was the founder, sole owner, and CEO, and 6 people. So it was a total team of 7, and the seller intended to transition towards retirement. That was a key objective of his in doing the transaction with us. Perhaps obvious, I think but with a team that small, he had his hand in absolutely everything. And it was, I don't think we appreciated the degree of risk associated with a team that small. We knew it was a significant risk. We tried to address it ahead of time. We had a massive seller note. The seller basically financed half the transaction, which is pretty unusual. So that was comforting for us, but nevertheless, regardless, he was very clear that he was going to leave in 9 to 12 months. So we just had this. I think that made it very clear that we just needed to extract as much knowledge from him as possible, and keep him happy. Frankly, I mean, there was a difficult dynamic where I think he respected me and David and supported us, but he had very strong opinions about how the business should be run. I think we had to dance around that pretty delicately while he was still there, because he was such a crucial part of the business. And the upside of having such a small team is that we got to know everyone pretty quickly. We literally took everyone out for a meal individually. So there was we were able to develop really strong relationships. And I think, one of the things that we did do well is just, be as open and transparent as possible. And we were told to our face, what are you guys doing? You don't know anything about this industry. But I think, I creating the opportunity for the, small team, but creating the opportunity for them to be, open and direct with us, and then for us to respond with, humility and vulnerability, I think was really important. And we needed to keep the team. We didn't have many people to lose. There was certainly no, dead weight, but we did. We retained. I mean, I think we had one retirement, but we had no departures other than one person retiring for the entirety of our, 4-year ownership period. And we were able to, I think, empower those people in many ways to take on more responsibility, because I think they had been trained by the prior owner that every decision, large, medium, and small, had to go through him. And it took a long time for us to sort of work through that training. It was ingrained in them that they didn't have agency or autonomy to make any sort of decision. So I think it was what started off as really scary for them, having 2 people quite young, in their 20s, with no prior travel or operating experience, I think turned out to be a really nice, nice relationship and nice career opportunity for them. The last thing I'll say, and then I'll get into into questions, is as I reflect back on day one. So we closed on a Friday, 11 a.m. David and I went out for celebratory lunch in Manhattan, and we started, officially on the following Monday. We thought a lot about how we were going to introduce ourselves and what we were going to say about our vision for the company. All people wanted to know was, like, am I going to get fired? And am I still going to get my, and assuming I'm not, are you going to cut my health benefits? I mean, people, I think, and yes, later we learned about, concerns about our lack of knowledge about the industry and youth and all that. But I can't stress enough how much people, when push comes to shove, they might have some emotions about a leadership transition, but if you can ensure them or give them confidence that you're protecting their bottom line, everything else is sort of noise. So whenever I talk to a searcher who's about to do their sort of day one intro, I try to stress that, yes, it's an opportunity for you to share what you envision for the company, but put yourself in their shoes and think about, what have they heard about, investment firms or private equity or acquisitions? People hear that, there are layoffs, and people hear that often that benefits are changed. And so think about people's bottom line, and in addition to all the other things that you want to say. But sharing your vision is more on day one is more for you and less for them. So anyway, that's it.